Hello and welcome. You're watching India Today Global. Some news coming in at the top of this hour. President Trump has now cracked down on China yet again. Trump administration expands crackdown on Chinese imports, targeting forced labor. This time around, the Homeland Security Department adds steel, copper and lithium to a high priority enforcement list under the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, with officials citing repulsive slave labor. We've seen in the past, for security reasons, many companies that have been sanctioned, Chinese companies that have been sanctioned, entities that have been sanctioned. This time around, we are looking at clear case of sanctioning of Chinese imports that targeting forced labor, saying that Uyghur labor is forced into working in these sectors. As the world resetting ties to make this planet a better place to live in, as the world rallies to bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, ceasefire by Hamas and a future for Gazans, two old neighbors, India and China, are also making progress in developing relations that were frozen after the Galwan clash. Ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that's the SCO summit, to be held in Tianjin on the 31st of August, Foreign Minister Wang was on a two-day visit to India, and he expressed hope that both the countries will keep aside their setbacks and make progress which will be in the interest of both the nations.
It is raining meetings just after a much-anticipated summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin last week. And with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky meeting President Trump, along with major European leaders this week beginning, China can't left behind. As India slapped with additional tariff on 25% for buying Russian oil, India looks at its neighbor and competitor China. With Prime Minister Narendra Modi slated to visit China to participate in multilateral Shanghai Cooperation Organizations that begins on August 31st, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang was on a two-day visit to India. His next stop, Pakistan. Wang to land in Islamabad on August 20th to attend the Pakistan-China strategic dialogue and meet both the civil and military leaderships. Speaking at the 24th round of special representative level talks on the boundary question, Wang said the setbacks experienced in the past few years between India and China were not in the interest of the people of either country.
The setbacks we experienced in the past few years were not in the interests of the people of our two countries. And then in October last year, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi had an important meeting in Kazan. That meeting pointed the direction for the development of our bilateral relations and provided impetus for the proper settlement of the boundary question.
Wang also underlined Beijing's expectations from the upcoming SCO summit.
We identified specific goals and formed a working framework. We are heartened to see the stability that is now restored in the borders.
Welcoming Wang, NSA Ajit Doval said there has been an upward trend in bilateral engagements in recent months.
Very warm welcome.
Doval stressed the importance of the current round of talks, pointing to Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit for the SCO summit.
I am very hopeful that, like the last one, this 24th Special Representative level talks would be equally successful. Our Prime Minister will be visiting for the SCO summit shortly, and therefore I think that this SR level talks assume a very special importance.
The Chinese Foreign Minister's visit to Islamabad comes against the backdrop of events including the recent India-Pakistan conflict. The conflict in the West Asia concerning Iran, Israel and the US, and after Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir was hosted by the US President at the White House lunch. The relations are on the mend, but until there is complete de-escalation at the border, it cannot be business as usual. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now from Beijing is Aina Tangen. He's Senior Fellow Tahi Institute, also an expert when it comes to India-China relations, keeps a very close eye. Thank you, Aina, for joining us here. Let's begin with the engagements. We are seeing a lot of engagements. Special representatives means a lot of importance attached to the boundary question. But when it comes to the recent standoff between China and India, there have been no special announcements. Status quo remains when it comes to de-escalation.
Well, not quite. China has indicated that they're going to release the tunnel boring machines, also rare earths, and some fertilizer things like this. I think these were aimed at making sure that this was going to be a friendly visit. Obviously, they're meeting to set the agenda for Modi and Xi, assuming that they have a meeting on the sidelines of the SCO at the end of this month. But more importantly, these are two neighbors. They have issues, areas of influence, border, trade, things. These have to be worked out. And they started. Now, this process started, you can easily trace it back to last October. This is before Donald Trump's tariffs. But Donald Trump's tariffs have moved things up. I think it's very clear that everyone in India is kind of scratching their head. What did India do to the US to deserve this treatment? Public humiliation, interference in the general elections, this kind of color revolution in Bangladesh, signing development agreements with Pakistan, claiming credit for ending a war he didn't. These, it just doesn't make any sense. And then all of a sudden, 50%. Well, Gita, I can tell you, the only way it makes sense is if you look back at Donald Trump's campaign rhetoric, which shifted from just solely about China to the BRICS.
Well, okay. Then I know when I said status quo, I just meant the boundary question. They're still talking about de-escalation, but no announcement if the process is going to really start at the border when it comes to real de-escalation.
Yeah, I mean, there's 60,000 troops from both sides that are massed along the borders. They've been pulling back gradually. It is a process. There's a lot of distrust on both sides in terms of from the Galwan incident. And they're testing each other to make sure that this is real. I mean, China has been throwing a goodwill gesture out there. Saying that, look, we're going to do some things economically, but they're concerned. Is this just a stalking horse? Is Delhi looking to get leverage with the United States by going to Beijing? Or is this legitimately a thawing attempt? Now, the border issue will last beyond Trump, but trust is something that has to be built up over time. It can be lost in an instant. And at this point, both sides have to slowly move at this in a very kind of crab-like way in order to be assured that the other one is not acting in bad faith.
Now, there are many questions that are going to be asked of the engagements that are happening, but we'll have to wait and see how this really moves forward. Is it reset or forward movement? Aina Tangen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, that is the question. There are going to be many questions on what is at stake over here. There's a history between India and China of distrust. Here's an excerpt from our show, Statecraft, where we talk about what it means to engage China. Can India trust China? For the full show, you can log on to India Today Global YouTube channel and watch it. But here's an excerpt. For decades, India and China have shared a long and uneasy border, a border marked by mountains, rivers, and the scars of conflict. In recent years, they've tried to talk peace. Leaders have met, ministers have traveled. Disengagement was announced, yet the shadow of mistrust lingers. In Washington, Donald Trump's new tariff war on Beijing is redrawing global alignments. Many believe it is pushing India closer to China. But the real question isn't, will the elephant and the dragon dance together? It is, should the elephant and the dragon dance together at all? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. As Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi wraps up his two-day visit to India, New Delhi faces an uncomfortable question. Can it really trust China even as Beijing deepens its embrace of Pakistan? The visit is framed as a chance to reset ties, but beneath the handshakes and formal statements lies a harsher reality. India must decide whether dialogue with China is diplomacy or delusion. Wang Yi's arrival comes at a sensitive moment, but trust does not come easily. Behind the veneer of renewed engagement is Beijing's parallel dance with Islamabad. Wang Yi's next stop after India is Pakistan, a move that undercuts any illusion of singular focus on India. At the very moment Beijing speaks of stabilizing ties with Delhi, it strengthens military and diplomatic muscle of India's most entrenched adversary. This duplicity is what fuels the central dilemma. Can India take China's assurances at face value? The shadow of Pakistan looms large. China's ironclad friendship with Islamabad is no secret. In recent months, Pakistan has received Hungur-class submarines, J-10C fighter jets, and diplomatic cover from Beijing during India's anti-terror strikes. Beijing even rolled out the red carpet for Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, weeks after he visited Washington. For Delhi, the optics are striking. China poses as a peace partner on the Himalayas while bolstering Pakistan's military machine in India's backyard. And Beijing's willingness to balance between Washington and Islamabad only adds to India's suspicions. Pakistan is not merely a client, but a conduit through which China exerts pressure on Delhi from multiple angles. Brahmaputra Dam is the clearest example of Beijing's unilateralism. Approved in late 2024, the project is hailed in China as a project of the century, the largest hydropower dam in the world, costing an estimated $167 billion. But downstream in India and Bangladesh, it is viewed as a weapon. Water experts warn of unpredictable ecological damage, food security risks, and a precedent where Beijing controls a river that sustains millions. Delhi has lodged concerns, but Beijing brushes them aside, insisting the project is an internal matter of sovereignty. For India's public, the message is chilling. China does not consult, it constructs. Still, diplomacy demands engagement. Modi may travel to Tianjin for the SCO summit later this month, potentially meeting Xi Jinping on the sidelines. This would be their first bilateral in years, and the optics will be closely watched. But optics alone cannot erase structural realities. If Beijing expects Delhi to reset relations, it must explain why its most loyal ally remains Pakistan, the very state that exports terrorism to India. Some argue that engagement is necessary not because China is trustworthy, but because disengagement is riskier. A frozen conflict along the Himalayas is costly. Trade between the two nations worth $100 billion cannot be ignored. And global forums from BRICS to the SCO require Indian and Chinese cooperation. But engagement does not equal trust. It is a pragmatic hedge, not a partnership of equals. For Delhi, dialogue is about risk management, not reconciliation. The challenge for Delhi is to balance pragmatism with principle. Dialogue must continue, but without illusions. China's embrace of Pakistan is unlikely to loosen. Its projects on the Brahmaputra will proceed regardless of Indian protests. Its presence in the Indian Ocean will expand as Beijing pursues maritime power. To trust China blindly would be folly. To engage China cautiously may be necessity. So as Modi prepares for his possible China trip and as Jaishankar hosts Wang Yi, the stage is set for another chapter in the uneasy India-China relationship. The handshakes will be polite, the communiques diplomatic, the optics carefully managed. But beneath it all remains the same question that refuses to fade. Can India trust China while Beijing holds Pakistan so close? The answer may not lie in words but in actions. If China truly seeks a reset, it must show restraint on the border, transparency on water projects, and neutrality in South Asia. It must stop arming Pakistan in ways that directly threaten India. It must honor its own past commitments, including the so-called provisional nature of the Shaksgam Agreement. Until then, India's caution is not hesitation, it is wisdom born of experience. Trust, after all, is not given, it is earned, and Beijing has much left to prove. As the latest news comes in Vladimir Putin that he has had a brief conversation with Donald Trump and has suggested that he could host a potential one-on-one meeting with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky in Russia. That might not be an acceptable option for the Ukrainian president. Therefore, where the two meet next is unclear. But French President Emmanuel Macron suggested Geneva as a possible venue, one that has been welcomed by Switzerland, assuring no arrest of Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Meanwhile, the question over territorial secessions continues to burn. President Trump has said that Zelensky could end the war almost immediately if he cedes Crimea and gives up on plans of joining the NATO. Here's a report.
After two back-to-back grand summits, one in Alaska and the second at the White House, all eyes now turn to President Donald Trump and how he handles a war that has left a country ravaged and another in the fear of unknown severe consequences. 2 days after Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, the US president posted on Truth Social a big day at the White House on Monday. Soon after, major European leaders, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen attended a Trump-Zelensky summit at the White House to raise concerns on security guarantees for Ukraine.
There'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Post the meeting, President Trump dialed his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin and discussed the idea of raising the level of representatives in a 40-minute call. Kremlin, which confirmed the call, did not specify what the raising of level at meetings meant.
In this phone call, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump supported the idea of continuing direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations. The idea was discussed that it would be worthwhile to explore the possibility of raising the level of representatives from the Ukrainian and Russian sides, that is, those representatives participating in the mentioned direct negotiations.
Earlier, a conversation of President Trump with French President Macron was caught on hot mic regarding Putin's will to make a deal.
Yeah, set up a trilateral. Yeah.
Where do you want to do?
I think he wants to make a deal. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody. I think we'll let the press come in for a minute. Please.
Thank you.
How's the game doing? All right? Are you good? You look fantastic.
A day after leaders rallied in the White House in support of the Ukrainian president, French President Emmanuel Macron attended a video call with the European leaders. The video call, chaired by European Council President Antonio Costa, followed a collision of the willing call, which Macron attended as well. The meetings, which are being seen as positive and hope for the return of peace, seems high.
At first, Russia suggested a bilateral Ukraine-Russia meeting. At first and then trilateral. So as I said, we are ready for any formats at the level of leaders because only at the leaders level can we solve all those complicated and painful issues. At least for us, they are important and painful. That's why I confirmed, and all the European leaders supported me, that we are ready for a bilateral meeting with Putin, and after that we count on a trilateral meeting. The question will be about how the bilateral meeting will go.
Trump said for a speedy resolve to the Russia-Ukraine conflict would set up a direct meet between Putin and Zelensky, followed by a trilateral meet in which he would take part. Though Trump has stressed on a complete solution to the war and not a temporary ceasefire, he has also said that Zelensky could end the war almost immediately if he ceded Crimea and gave up on his dream of not joining the NATO. Russia occupies around a fifth of Ukraine, and US President has said land swapping and changes to territory will be crucial for any settlement. The Kyiv International Institute of Sociology says in an opinion poll it conducted in June showed that 68% of those questioned opposed the idea of officially recognizing some parts of occupied land as Russian, while 24% are open to this. Bureau Report, India Today.
In the latest on Israel and Gaza, Hamas has accepted a proposed hostage release deal that includes a 60-day ceasefire in war-torn Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has said it will agree to cease hostilities if all hostages are released and Hamas lays down its arms.
Hamas has accepted a proposed hostage release deal that includes a 60-day ceasefire in war-torn Gaza. According to Saudi channel, the proposal represents a compromise between a full ceasefire and a temporary truce, which includes the release of the remaining hostages and a gradual withdrawal of the Israeli military from Gaza.
We have received Hamas's response, and as I mentioned, we consider it a positive response, and it is almost identical to what was agreed on previously by the Israeli side. However, we are still waiting for Israel's response to this proposal that we received. What can be confirmed, colleagues, is that we are now not only, as we always say, at a pivotal moment, a decisive moment, and so on. We are now at a truly humanitarian moment. If we do not reach an agreement now, we are facing a humanitarian catastrophe that will make the catastrophe that preceded it seem tiny before it.
The development came as thousands of Palestinians fled their homes in eastern areas of Gaza City, fearing an imminent Israeli ground offensive. Israel has said it will agree to cease hostilities if all the hostages are released and Hamas lays down its arms. Meanwhile, Israeli protesters blocked a main highway in Tel Aviv as they were calling for a deal to end the war in Gaza and return the hostages.
We started on Sunday stopping Israel in order to bring our hostages back. We find that the only thing that works is putting pressure on the Israeli government to make a deal, to seal the deal and bring all of our hostages back and stop the war in Gaza. We will not stop until all our hostages are home.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized his Australian counterpart, Anthony Albanese, for forsaking Australia's Jewish community and betraying Israel. Netanyahu's comment, published on a post on his office's X account, followed Israel's revocation of the visas of Australian diplomats to the Palestinian Authority on Monday, after a decision by Canberra to recognize a Palestinian state and cancel the visa of an Israeli lawmaker. Israel's plan to seize control of Gaza City has stirred alarm abroad and at home, where tens of thousands of Israelis held some of the largest protests since the war began, urging a deal to end the fighting and free the remaining 50 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza since October 7, 2023. Earlier, Egyptian Foreign Minister and Palestinian Prime Minister called for Israel to let more aid into Gaza. Egypt says 1,288 aid trucks entered Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing from July 27th until August 17th. The two officials also visited Egypt's Red Crescent facilities, where aid is sorted and hot meals bound for Gaza are cooked and packaged. They then met with Palestinians' medical evacuees receiving treatment at Arish Hospital. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the son of Norway's Crown Princess has been charged with rape, domestic violence, assault and other crimes following a year-long police investigation. Marius Borg Høiby, 28, son of Crown Princess and stepson to Crown Prince Haakon, is expected to stand trial early next year and could face up to 10 years in prison if found guilty. Høiby has denied the most serious accusations against him, including those of rape and domestic violence. Høiby does not have a royal title and is outside the line of royal succession. Police in November 2024 held Høiby in detention for 1 week as part of the investigation. He was charged with 32 criminal offences, including 1 count of rape with sexual intercourse and 3 counts of rape without intercourse, some of which he filmed on his phone. Here are some other stories from across the world in World at a Glance.
As a part of crackdown on international students, the US Department has revoked more than 6,000 student visas this year. The visas were revoked because people had stayed after their visas expired or broken the law. Officials say the legal violations were for cases of assault, driving under the influence, burglary and support for terrorism. Air Canada's unionized flight attendants reached an agreement with the country's largest carrier, ending the first strike by its cabin crew in 40 years that had upended travel plans for hundreds of thousands of passengers. The strike that lasted nearly 4 days had led the airline that serves about 130,000 people daily to withdraw its third quarter and full year earnings guidance. A California woman known as the ketamine queen has agreed to plead guilty to supplying the drug that killed Friends actor Matthew Perry. According to a statement by the Justice Department, Jasmine Sangha is scheduled to go on trial in September and will plead guilty to 5 federal charges in total, according to Justice Department statement. Beauty queen Nadeem Ayub will become the first woman to represent Palestinians at the Miss Universe pageant. Ayub will join competitors from more than 130 other countries and territories at the 74th Miss Universe final, which will be held on November 21st in Bangkok, Thailand.
That's all in this edition of India Today Global. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and take care.